At the beginning of this story, Daniel and Ethan are standing in exactly the same place. They are both 25 years old, both earning a steady income, and both committed to investing $1,000 every single month for the next 30 years. They have the same discipline, the same starting capital, and the same long-term goal, financial freedom. But the moment they choose their strategy, everything begins to diverge. Daniel decides he wants income, not just growth, not just numbers on a screen, but real cash flowing into his account. He builds a portfolio filled with dividend-paying companies, large, stable businesses that reward shareholders every quarter. Every few months, money shows up in his account, and that changes how he feels about investing. It feels real. It feels productive. It feels like his money is working for him in a visible, tangible way. Ethan, on the other hand, takes a completely different approach. He doesn't care about dividends at all. He buys a low-cost growth-focused index fund and leaves it alone. There are no payments hitting his account, no notifications of income, no sense of immediate reward. His portfolio simply goes up and down with the market, quietly compounding in the background without any excitement. In the first couple of years, Daniel feels like he made the smarter decision. Every time he receives a dividend payment, it reinforces his belief that his strategy is working. He sees progress not just in percentages, but in actual dollars being deposited into his account. It gives him confidence. It gives him a sense of control. He can point to something and say, "This is what my investments are producing." Ethan doesn't have that experience. His account balance grows, but it doesn't feel the same. There's no emotional reward attached to it. If the market goes up, his balance increases. If the market goes down, it drops. There is no steady stream of income to anchor his expectations. From the outside, it looks like he is doing less, even though he is following a disciplined plan. By the time they reach year 5, the difference in perception becomes even more obvious. Daniel's portfolio is now generating a few $1,000s a year in dividends. It's not enough to live on, but it's enough to feel meaningful. It feels like validation. It feels like proof that his strategy is working exactly as intended. He talks about it with confidence, explaining how he is building a passive income machine that will eventually replace his salary. Ethan, at the same point, has a slightly larger portfolio, but no income to show for it. If you looked only at their experiences, Daniel appears to be winning. He has cash flow. He has something to show. Ethan just has a number, but beneath the surface, something important is happening, something Daniel doesn't notice. Every dollar that Daniel receives as a dividend is a dollar that the company did not reinvest into its own growth. That money could have been used to expand operations, develop new products, or increase efficiency. Instead, it was paid out. While this provides income in the short term, it subtly reduces the company's ability to grow in the long term. Ethan's investments, on the other hand, are heavily exposed to companies that prioritize growth. These companies retain more of their earnings and reinvest them back into the business. Over time, this leads to faster expansion, higher earnings, and ultimately higher stock prices. The difference is not obvious in the early years, but it begins to compound. By year 8, Ethan's portfolio starts to pull ahead. The gap is not dramatic at first. It might only be a few $1,000s. It is easy to ignore. Daniel continues focusing on his dividend income, which is steadily increasing every year. His attention is fixed on the cash flow, not the total value of his portfolio. This is where the psychological trap becomes clear. Dividends shift the investor's focus from total wealth to income. Daniel measures success by how much cash he receives, while Ethan measures success by overall portfolio growth. These two perspectives lead to very different outcomes over time. As the years pass, Daniel's dividend income continues to rise. It feels like progress, and in a sense, it is. But it is not the kind of progress that maximizes long-term wealth. Much of that income is simply a redistribution of value rather than new value being created. Meanwhile, Ethan's portfolio continues compounding at a higher rate, quietly building momentum. By year 10, the difference becomes harder to ignore. Daniel's portfolio has grown significantly, and his dividend income has reached a level that feels substantial. But Ethan's portfolio is now noticeably larger. The gap between them has widened to tens of thousands of dollars. Daniel still feels comfortable with his strategy. The income reassures him. It gives him confidence that he is on the right path. Ethan, despite being ahead, doesn't feel the same sense of validation. His strategy still feels passive, almost invisible. This contrast highlights one of the most important truths in investing. The strategy that feels the most rewarding in the short term is not always the one that produces the best long-term results. Dividends provide immediate feedback, while growth investing delays gratification, but delayed gratification is often where the real gains come from. Another critical misunderstanding lies in how dividends are perceived. Many investors think of dividends as extra money, as if they are receiving something in addition to their investment returns. In reality, when a company pays a dividend, its stock price typically adjusts downward by the same amount. The investor is not gaining new wealth. They are simply receiving a portion of their existing investment in cash form. This becomes even more significant in taxable accounts. Every dividend payment is subject to taxes in the year it is received. Daniel does not have the option to defer these taxes. He must pay them annually, reducing the amount of money that remains invested and compounding. Ethan, in contrast, does not incur taxes unless he sells his investments. This allows his entire portfolio to continue compounding without interruption. Over time, this tax efficiency becomes a powerful advantage. By the end of the first decade, the stage is set for a much larger divergence. Daniel has built a portfolio that produces income, but at the cost of slower growth and ongoing tax obligations. Ethan has built a portfolio that maximizes growth, allowing compounding to work more effectively. From this point forward, the differences between their strategies will no longer be subtle. They will accelerate, and over the next 20 years, those small differences will turn into a massive gap. From year 10 to year 20, things start to change in a big way. The compound growth of Ethan's index fund portfolio begins to pick up steam, while Daniel's dividend portfolio continues to grow. It grows at a slower pace, held back by the constant need to pay out dividends and the taxes that come with them. The gap between their portfolios isn't just increasing, it's accelerating. By year 10, Ethan's portfolio is already ahead, but now it starts compounding at an exponential rate. Every year, the growth begins to outpace Daniel's dividends. The difference might seem small at first, just a few $1,000s here and there, but when you factor in the long-term impact, it becomes a game changer. For Daniel, the story is different. Every time he receives a dividend, it feels like a win. His portfolio may be smaller than Ethan's, but at least it's paying him regularly. Yet, as he approaches year 15, something starts to become apparent. His dividends, which seemed so appealing in the early years, are now overshadowing by the growth in Ethan's portfolio. He still feels the same comfort from receiving his dividends, but the total wealth gap is becoming harder to ignore. By the time they reach year 15, the differences are impossible to ignore. Daniel has been investing in his dividend stocks 4 years, and he's now receiving over $10,000 in annual dividend income. This feels like a huge achievement to him. He has reached a level of passive income that many investors dream of. But when you look at the numbers, things aren't as rosy as they appear. Daniel's portfolio, despite the income, is now worth about $325,000. He has accumulated wealth, but that wealth has grown slowly due to the constant dividend payouts and tax drag. On the other hand, Ethan's portfolio has been quietly compounding, and now it's worth $380,000, a $55,000 gap. Ethan hasn't received any cash income along the way, but his portfolio has grown substantially more. His strategy has been focused purely on growth, and even with a smaller initial portfolio, his wealth has grown faster because he hasn't had to pay out dividends, which would have hindered his compounding. Daniel, still focused on income, sees a small benefit in the cash he's receiving, but he fails to realize that those dividends are costing him in the long term. At this stage, Daniel is still convinced that dividends are the key to financial success. He looks at his growing dividend checks and feels secure in his approach. But when he checks Ethan's portfolio, he can't help but notice the bigger number. And it stings. Now, we're 20 years into their investing journey. Daniel's portfolio has grown to about $510,000, and he's receiving over $20,000 annually in dividends. This feels amazing. He can now use his dividend income to cover a significant portion of his living expenses. His lifestyle is improving, and the passive income feels like a success. But Ethan's portfolio is worth $620,000. The gap between them has now reached $110,000. This is the real impact of compound growth. Ethan's portfolio has been growing steadily without interruption. His wealth has been reinvested each year, without paying out dividends or getting hit with taxes. What's more, Ethan's portfolio has benefited from exposure to high-growth sectors, like technology, which have driven the market's returns over the past 2 decades. Daniel's dividend-focused portfolio, by contrast, has systematically underweighted technology stocks, which have been some of the best-performing sectors in the market. This sector bias has further hurt Daniel's portfolio growth. At this point, Daniel starts to feel the effects of his strategy. He's still receiving a steady stream of dividend income, but he's starting to realize that the total value of his portfolio is lagging behind. His dividend payments, while helpful, are not enough to compensate for the compounding growth Ethan's portfolio has enjoyed. One of the most overlooked factors in this debate is the tax drag. Every time Daniel receives a dividend payment, he has to pay taxes on it. This means that a portion of his income goes directly to the IRS instead of being reinvested into his portfolio. Over time, this tax drag starts to add up. By the end of year 20, Daniel has paid approximately $50,000 in taxes on his dividends. Ethan, on the other hand, has not paid any taxes on his portfolio until now. He hasn't received any income, so there's no taxable event. Even when he eventually sells his shares, he has the flexibility to manage his taxes strategically, potentially taking advantage of capital gains tax rates and tax-deferred growth. The difference in how their portfolios are taxed and how their wealth compounds has started to show. While Daniel's wealth is reduced by taxes every year, Ethan's wealth continues to grow without interruption. This tax difference becomes a major factor in the long-term performance gap. Now we've reached year 30. This is where the gap explodes. By the time they reach retirement, Daniel's portfolio has grown to approximately $1.4 million. His portfolio generates about $56,000 in dividends annually, which feels great. It's a solid income stream, and Daniel is looking forward to living off this income in retirement. Ethan's portfolio, however, has grown to nearly $1.8 million. He has not received a single dollar of income from his portfolio in the last 30 years, but his wealth has compounded steadily and efficiently. He has benefited from tax-deferred growth, lower costs, and more exposure to high-growth sectors like tech. The gap between them is now $370,000, the equivalent of an entire house's worth of value. The difference is not just in the total value of their portfolios. It's in the way their portfolios were built. Ethan's approach of compounding, tax efficiency, and exposure to growth has far outpaced Daniel's income-focused, dividend-paying strategy. But it doesn't stop there. There's a crucial factor that Daniel hasn't accounted for: estate planning. If Daniel were to pass away, his children would inherit his portfolio, but they would inherit it at its current value, which includes the taxes Daniel has already paid on dividends over the years. Essentially, he has already paid his death tax every time he received a dividend payment. Ethan, on the other hand, has a significant advantage. If Ethan were to pass away, his children would inherit his portfolio with a step-up in basis. This means that his children would inherit his portfolio at its current market value, effectively wiping out any capital gains taxes. This creates a significant advantage for Ethan, as his heirs would inherit a larger sum without the tax burden that Daniel's heirs would face. This is one of the hidden advantages of growth investing, the ability to pass on a larger, tax-efficient portfolio to your heirs when it comes time to retire. Daniel is facing a tricky situation. His portfolio is generating $56,000 a year in dividends, but he still needs to pay taxes on that income. He might end up with only $45,000 to $50,000 after taxes, depending on his tax bracket. This income is solid, but it's also dependent on how much the market can continue to pay out in dividends. Ethan, by contrast, is able to sell portions of his portfolio in a tax-efficient manner, keeping his realized gains within a lower tax bracket. By carefully managing his withdrawals, he can take out the same amount of money as Daniel, or even more, but without paying as much in taxes. This strategy allows Ethan to get more from his portfolio, despite not having any immediate income from dividends. Ethan's retirement strategy is centered around using the gains in his portfolio to fund his retirement, and he does so in a way that minimizes tax liability and maximizes efficiency. After 30 years of investing, the numbers are clear. Daniel's dividend-focused strategy has served him well in terms of income, but it has come at a huge cost in terms of growth. His portfolio, while generating income, has been held back by taxes, dividend payouts, and slower compounding. Ethan's growth-focused strategy, on the other hand, has far outperformed in terms of total wealth. His portfolio is larger, his taxes are lower, and his wealth has compounded efficiently over time. In the end, Ethan's strategy has not only given him a larger portfolio, but it has also provided more tax flexibility, better growth, and a stronger foundation for his retirement. The key takeaway is simple. Total return is the goal. Dividends are not free money. They are a forced partial sale of your investments, and they come with tax consequences. For long-term wealth building, growth investing wins, not by a small margin, but by sure. Here's a brief disclaimer you can use. This video is for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. Investing involves risks, including the loss of principal. Always do your own research and consult with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.